Hello Internet, I'm a game developer who's been in the industry for 5 years. This summer, I'm launching my first Steam game, Tome of Talis. In this video, I wanted to share 8 tips I learned while working on my game. Before we get to the tips, it is helpful to understand what kind of game I've been making. Tome of Talis is a tactical roguelite, where you lead armies of dice to battle against other commanders, utilizing spells and powerful relics to turn the tides in your favor. Your eventual goal is to challenge the great Commander Talis, and prove yourself his worthy heir. If it looks interesting to you, the demo is available now on Steam. Finally, feel free to comment suggestions on video topics for Godot engine or game development. When Slay the Spire first came out, it blew my mind. The variety of cards and the complex interactions they could produce rocked the gaming world. For years, I assumed they had built some sort of complex system to build new cards quickly, and I spent a lot of time trying to replicate something similar. I had very little success with this, because there was always another feature in my system I didn't account for, or a special circumstance I wanted for a particular unit. Finally, during an interview, one of the developers commented that they hardcode pretty much everything in the game. I felt very silly after this. While it does take a bit more work, I honestly believe hardcoding is often the way to go. By using this simple approach, building content like spells became a lot more straightforward. Sometimes, a problem does require a complex solution, but before you commit, try something easy and see if it does the job well enough. This piece of advice is one of those little things that might save you a lot of pain. I think this tip is best explained through a story. Inside my dice resource, I had a variable called texture. I thought this would be fine, since resources don't contain any variables named texture, unlike Sprite 2Ds. This worked for most of the game's development, until one day I made the variable exported. I tested the day's changes out in the editor, and sent a build to playtesters. Immediately, people were having crazy bugs that made no sense. Dice were eternally blank, attacks did no damage, crashes were happening all over. I ended up tracking down the bug by testing older builds until it started to appear. Then, I removed the changes one at a time until the game was working. It was not a particularly fun experience. I still have no idea why all those bugs were caused by that one change, but you can bet I test every new build of the game outside of the editor now. In a perfect world, we would all write code that works every time. In reality, bugs might require big rewrites, a successful experiment might mean refactoring part of the codebase, and scope changes may invalidate previous work. As an example, I have rewritten the dice script in my game at least 3 times. While it was a lot of work, rewriting the dice script made them feel much more functional and allowed for a higher degree of polish. When planning a game, you should always assume that you'll have to rewrite major systems at least once. Keeping this in mind can help you write better documentation, and in my case, helps with perfectionism. This tip could probably be a video on its own, but here's an abbreviated version. Everyone recommends playtesting as often as you can, but I almost never see advice on how to playtest effectively, so here's my methodology and reasoning. Build a group of people you can ask to play your game, usually friends or family. At the beginning, pick one at a time and have them play through your game. At this stage, primarily focus on finding bugs and other issues. Once they are done, go fix everything and bring in the next person. Why do I do it this way? Early in development, the fun factor is usually not there yet. In my experience, having a big group of people play your game just leads to a lot of duplicate bug reports. Additionally, you don't want to ask your friends every other week to play your game, so cycling through them helps burn your goodwill slower. Once the game is more stable and the core is complete, you can begin organizing big playtests that last over the course of a day or week. These playtests will hopefully shine light on whether the core gameplay loop is fun or not. There will still be some rough edges, and you will likely need to make some big changes based on the feedback. You can generally tell you're in a good spot when 2 things happen. First, a playtest finishes with minimal new design problems found, and second, players rate the game around a 6 or 7 out of 10. I could do a much deeper dive on playtesting, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that. an important skill to learn is seeing the fun in a game before it is fully formed. For a long time, my game was pretty janky, and playtesters weren't having much fun. It was so bad, several playtesters told me to make a completely different game, usually something more similar to their tastes. In a vacuum, this all sounds pretty harsh, but by looking through their feedback, I didn't see many complaints with the core idea of dice fighting each other. Instead, most were frustrated with confusing onboarding, unbalanced encounters, and unclear visuals. I had assumed for my harshest playtesters, this game probably just wasn't for them. However, after spending a couple months ironing out the mentioned issues, they both changed their ratings from a -3 out of 10 to 7 out of 10. The key takeaway is to look at the feedback on your game closely. If the complaints are focused on the core aspect, more experimentation is needed. Otherwise, try polishing the weaker areas and see if the issues disappear. One last piece of advice. Playtesters will almost always ask for the game to be more like whatever genres they enjoy. Occasionally good ideas come from this, but remember, this is your game. All over the internet, gamers claim they don't care about graphics. This is sort of true, but not in the way you might think. You see, when they think of games with bad art, they are usually thinking of something like Geometry Dash or Binding of Isaac. I believe what they really mean is, graphics don't have to be hyper-realistic to appeal to me. What does this mean in practice? Players will appreciate much cheaper or simpler art with a consistent art direction over kit-bashed high-quality art. A good example of this is Horsey Game. The art is intentionally bad, but it works because it fits with the game's very wacky experience. Tome of Talis' art isn't anything crazy, but by retaining a consistent style across art and effects, it has a much higher level of appeal than simple pixel art would imply. Making the most of your limited time is vital as an indie developer. At first, I avoided building any sort of tools to speed up development because I thought it wouldn't help me get the game done. After a full day of trying to pin down a really weird bug, I learned my lesson. It doesn't need to look pretty, but building out debug tools pays massive dividends down the line. In my case, I built a tool that allows me to set up a fight in the exact configuration I want. This has made testing several bugs that might have taken up to an hour only require 5 minutes. There could be some hidden benefits too. This debug system was very convenient for creating cool fights for trailers and showcases. In the future, I might even make it possible for players to send me in-game replays directly to make the process even faster. Regardless of scope, you'll always have more ideas than time. Not only that, some ideas can be very time-consuming to implement, or change the game feel too much. Once you've gotten past the initial experimentation phase, it is important to remember the phrase, save it for the sequel. If your game ends up taking off, you'll have plenty of ideas to jump into. If your game ends up flopping, you'll avoid spending tons of time on features that probably wouldn't have saved it. 10 more levels, or an even fancier combo system probably don't matter if the core gameplay didn't sell the game. In a way, I think the first entry of a game into a series is the ultimate idea validation. If it succeeds, future titles can really push the envelope further and build your fan base. Thanks for watching. If this video performs well, I plan to make more content on a variety of game dev topics, so feel free to comment ideas below or leave a like. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck on your game dev ambitions.